Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta, and it is Friday, December 31st, New Year's Eve. I'm happy to be here, and this is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and chat room's open, and I do have the link in there to what we were looking at yesterday, Post-Abuse Vulnerabilities by Catherine Patricelli, and that's from mentalhelp.net, www.mentalhelp.net. And so we're going to continue looking at that article and finish that up today. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. And for everybody who's tuning into my shows, thank you very much for tuning in. And I don't really know who's all listening to the shows. And, you know, I had no idea that many people would be listening to this show this long. So thank you very much. I've been on for a little bit over a year, done about 515 shows. And, I just appreciate everybody who's taken the time to be with me here and listen to my shows and follow me through my journey, and I really appreciate the support. So I'm not a counselor or therapist, and I say this on every show, but just in case someone's listening for the first time, they need to know this. And so I'm not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows here on Blog Talk Radio, and I just want to be one more voice to speak out against abuse, to stand up, for child rights, and to speak up, on behalf of survivors, because a lot of people cannot come forward publicly, and a lot of people are still, possibly the abusers living, and they just fear for their lives, and so many people can't speak out. And I thought, well, I'll speak out on behalf of everyone who can't speak out. I'll just be one more voice out here. There's lots and lots of voices out here for people who are survivors of child abuse, adult survivors, and so I just wanted to be one more. And I thought, well, why not? And I'll do this as long as I can, right? So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. So I'm not a professional, and I'm just a private citizen, so you have to listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about everything to do with abuse and abuse-related issues, child abuse mainly, some domestic violence and whatnot, and it's a very sensitive topic, so you have to know what's good for you to listen to. I know for me it's not that hard to talk about because I just live this. This is what I live every day, with the memories and just the aftermath of growing up in an abusive home. So it's just been part of my life, my whole life, so I don't mind talking about it. But I know a lot of people have a real problem listening to it, and it can be disturbing for people if they haven't heard a whole lot about it and haven't really thought about or been in that situation, right? So you have to be very careful listening to my shows. If it makes you uncomfortable, you have to turn it off, right? It is your discretion. You have to listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my show, and that's because I care about kids. That's why I'm doing this. And I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Awesome role. It's a volunteer role, and I love it. And thanks to Sandra Potter for allowing me to be part of this and to take on that role. And so I appreciate that very much. And so we care about children's lives. We're trying to save children's lives, really. And eventually we'll be doing a whole lot, and I hope everybody will stay tuned for 2011, because we have some great things coming up here in the future. And we plan on, we are nationwide online, but we will be nationwide a whole lot more than just online. We'll be nationwide with all kinds of programs available to people, and I'm just looking forward to the future. So here's to 2011 for all of us, right? And so it's awesome to be able to do this, but young people under the age of 18, I ask that you have permission to listen to my show, because I believe in protecting children's rights at all times, and you have the right to be protected, and you have the right to security and safety, and there's a lot of adult content on my shows, and also there's a chat room present, and young people, you need to know how to keep yourself safe online. The FBI.gov has a great website for internet safety for children and for parents, and I would suggest, if you don't want to check that one out, just type into your browser internet safety, online safety for children, things like this. And you can learn how to keep yourself safe online. It is so important. You want to know how to do that, because the FBI and ICAC are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days to try to protect children from child sexual predators, because they're out there in the thousands, literally the tens of thousands. And they are always trying to get a hold of children. That's what they do. They try to get a hold of children so they can, manipulate children and groom them and get a hold of them and sexually abuse them and sexually assault them. You do not want that to happen to you. So if you're a young person under the age of 18, you get permission to listen to my show. And have someone listen to it with you just to make sure it's something that you should be listening to, and protect yourself at all times. Just be very careful. There are a lot of sick people out there. So we'll get right into this topic here. And we're about halfway through, actually. And hello, Gypsy Witch. I got my good friend from Australia here. Hello, and Happy New Year to you in 1 hour. Australia's quite a bit ahead of us here, and they're already going to be celebrating their New Year in about an hour. And so my good friend is here, and I'm just so glad that you can be here with me. Thanks very much, Gypsy Witch. Just love you lots. And so we'll get right into this topic here, Post-Abuse Vulnerabilities by Catherine Petricelli, and that's from www.mentalhealth.net. And we were talking, we're about halfway through there, and she was just saying, that sometimes people, not always, but sometimes people who have been abused as children just grow up thinking that abuse is normal behavior and that everybody experiences this, and that, they sometimes get into abusive relationships as an adult because they just think it's normal, that abuse is normal, and it's really not. It's not normal. Sadly enough, it's common. But it shouldn't be common because people should not be abusing each other, right? But I never took on that role, and that's what we were talking about yesterday. I didn't take on that belief that abuse was normal because I knew that it was wrong, you know what I mean? And a lot of people, actually, not a lot of people, but there was one person in particular that I grew up with that actually kind of did take on that behavior, that belief system, that abuse is just the way it is, and, she got into an abusive relationship and actually I don't know how she's doing now because I haven't talked to her for years, but I would hope that she did figure it out after a while, but then of course we haven't seen each other for many years, and I just wish her the best. But so many people who have been abused actually do end up in these abusive relationships as adults, and it's just my mom is a perfect example of that. So that's what we were talking about kind of yesterday, and the cycle of violence, the cycle of abuse, people passing it on, and it's not good. My parents did that, and I'm glad. I'd like to think that I didn't pass it on. I don't have any children, and like my baby died halfway through in a miscarriage, so I don't have any children. So, but I would like to think that I would not have passed that cycle on, right? Because it's so sad that people do that. My parents did. They're perfect examples of passing on the cycle of abuse, right? So it's not good, right? And really, we as survivors have to be very careful that we don't pass on that cycle of abuse to our children and people around us, right? Because they don't deserve that, and we didn't, so they don't. So I think, not everybody who's been abused as a child will abuse their children. I actually know lots and lots of survivors who don't abuse their children and who have lots of children and don't abuse them at all because they were abused and they know how hard it is, how harsh it is, how hurtful and harmful it is, and they want their children to feel loved and cared for and nurtured and have a good life and grow up strong and confident and not pass on that cycle of abuse, and so that they will, when they have children, if they do decide to have children or are involved in a relationship, that they're not going to hurt their kids. They're not going to hurt their partners, right? It's so important. So make sure, if you're a survivor, that you don't pass that cycle of abuse on. It's so important. I would say, let's see, out of 7, I'm the 7th out of 7 children. I'm the last born. And there were 2 siblings that passed on the cycle of abuse, and one didn't. So out of 7 siblings, really, only 3 had children, and they only had a couple of children. So, and my brother had one son by marriage, not even by blood, really, just by marriage. It was my brother's wife's son, but he passed on the cycle of abuse, and it's so sad. My oldest sister, had 2 sons, and one of my nephews was killed by a drunk driver at the age of 25. But my 2 nephews, my oldest sister, she did pass on the cycle of abuse to those guys, and she treated them horribly. And they don't like to admit it, but my one nephew who's living doesn't like to admit it, but that's okay. That's his own problem. He'll have to deal with it. My sister is the only other sibling that had a child, a daughter, and she did not pass on the cycle of abuse. She treated her daughter very well, and she did the best she could with the skills that she had. None of us had any parenting skills. We were all taught how to hate and how to hurt people. We were taught how to hurt ourselves. We were taught how to abuse people, how to abuse children. Right? We were not taught how to love and how to nurture. None of us had a clue how to do any of that. We didn't even know how to love ourselves, and so it was hard. I'm sure it was not easy for my sister, but my sister who had a daughter, but she did a great job bringing up my niece, and my niece is she's 25 years old now, and she's really well rounded and really well established, and so my sister did a great job raising her, but she's the only one. The other siblings all treated their children horribly, and so pretty sad. And the rest of us didn't have any kids. So there you go. One of my brothers was murdered at the age of 19, didn't have any children. Two of my other brothers were drug users, and one was trying to kill himself all the time, and so he didn't have any children, as far as we know. And the other brother, as far as we know, didn't have any children, and he died at the age of 43 of a drug overdose. And myself, I didn't have any children after my baby was I miscarried. I didn't attempt to have any more children after that. So, there you go. But it's with that kind of those mental health issues and abuse and whatnot. I mean, I'm kind of, it's just when a whole family is so screwed up like that. I mean, I really think we would all needed serious counseling before raising children, right? So, had I had children, I'm serious. I thought about this later. I thought I would have wanted to know how to look after my children, really I would have gone to parenting classes. I would have gone to, get the information that I needed so that I would make sure that I was not abusing my child. Because when you grow up abused, some of the behaviors you take on, you certainly don't want to be passing that garbage on to your children. And that's what my parents did because they were so ignorant. They were told to get counseling, and court-ordered counseling. And I talk a lot about it because it makes me angry that they chose to stay in that violent, harsh, abusive state of mind. They chose to stay there. They wanted to hurt each other, and they wanted to hurt their children. And instead of getting help like they were told, they wanted to continue living that really dysfunctional nightmare of a life, right? And that I sit back today and I'm like, why would anybody choose that? You know what I mean? But people do, and that's the sad part. It's what they know. They're comfortable in it. My mom didn't know anything else. She was treated that way as a child. She was treated that way her whole marriage. That's all she knew, really. And my dad as well. He was very, very much brought up ignorantly and by some crazy people. And my grandparents were, who knows, but they were cousins, first cousins, and they were very strange. Born in the late 1800s, they were very, very strange. So my dad, he didn't get any good information from them either, and neither of them knew how to do anything as far as raising a family or bring up the children. And so they had the opportunity to get help, and of course they didn't want that. They just wanted to continue to live their psychopathic, abusive lifestyle, right? So absolutely horrible. Don't do that. If you have children, absolutely not. Get yourself some help and get your kids some help, right? So she goes on to talk here. We're going to finish up this article from Catherine Patricelli here, Post-Abuse Vulnerabilities. She says, subclinical abuse sequela. While some abuse victims develop diagnosable mental health or medical disorders, the majority of abuse survivors will end up with less severe outcomes that might be best described as subclinical. For example, not sufficient to meet criteria for a disorder. Post-abuse issues, right? So these issues may include, and she goes on to list them off, and this is what we see on most websites that talk about, post-abuse issues, right? So, if some, less severe outcomes, then the person, if you went and got diagnosed, as if you were abused as a child and grew up in a really dysfunctional environment, any one of us could have some of these or none of these or all of these, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that because we were abused as children that we would have these issues going on in our life, as other things can cause these things too. So it's not like it's just only child abuse that actually causes this stuff. There can be other issues related to it. That's why I don't really like to self-diagnose myself as far as if I have any issues or not. I just know whether I relate to it or not. So, but I don't diagnose myself as being, as having any kind of mental issues because I haven't been diagnosed, right, properly by a professional who knows, right? But I kind of relate to some of this stuff, and I think most people can, right? Issues, like she says, these issues may include difficulty developing or sustaining healthy long-term intimate relationships. Then there's another one, sexual dysfunction or discomfort with sexual intimacy, low self-esteem, a tendency towards self-blame, to just a whole bunch of stuff, difficulty expressing anger appropriately, a tendency to have a bad temper, right? So difficulty developing or sustaining healthy long-term intimate relationships. I mean, I don't think I have any issues with that as long as a person's going to treat me decently and I'm going to treat them decently. I don't seem to have a problem with that. But I know some people do. And I know when I was younger, I just didn't like the idea of being in a relationship because I wanted to be able to run, basically. I was always in the back of my mind that if I didn't like the way somebody was going to treat me, you know, when I was a young adult, especially like a boyfriend, or, you know, because I was interested in men, and, you know, if I had a boyfriend and I would keep it kind of, I would keep the relationship kind of at arm's length, right? Just so that, you know, if I had to break it off or whatever, it would be a lot easier. But I, over the years, learned that, you know, there are people out there that are good people. You know, they may still hurt you, you know, sadly enough. Everybody has the potential to hurt everybody at any time. And so, you know, but you have to know whether or not that person cares enough for you to be very, very careful that they don't hurt you. And that's where, you know, when I got older, I realized, hey, when I get into a relationship, I'm gonna make sure that the person knows that I'm not going to tolerate any more abuse, right? And so, you know, I really haven't had a lot of relationships because I really don't trust that many men, right? So I would not allow myself really to get into very many relationships, right? But the ones that I've been in, you know, the first real serious relationship I was in for a couple of years with this guy, you know, many years ago, he was abused as a child as well. And neither of us set up any boundaries. And so we were starting to really become abusive towards each other, including me. I was treating him like my mom was treating me and my whole family, our whole lives. I was just repeating that behavior, and was kind of being abusive towards him. I was being verbally abusive towards him, as well as throwing things around and kind of being a little bit violent to him. And I even kind of physically hurt him one time because he had back surgery, and I actually sort of stepped on him because it's actually horrific what people will do to each other. But he was becoming abusive to me, and I thought, buddy, you're not going to pull this crap with me. And so, you know, he was ready to hit me, right? He hit the wall instead. Actually, he hit a cabinet, kitchen cabinet. But we were going to start abusing each other physically. It was going to turn into physical violence, and we had to break it off. Because both of us were abused as children, and we had not set up any boundaries. We had not realized that our behavior was abusive, right? So we broke that off after about a year and a half, almost 2 years. He really broke it off. Like he left and moved away, and he was from Canada, right? So he just went home, right? And he's like, we can't do this, right? And it's a good thing because I think we would have killed each other, absolutely. Then I got into another relationship with my sweetheart, who I'm with right now. And that's been about 15 years now. And by this time, I realized my behavior, I sort of did. I mean, I still was pulling a few things that my mom taught me how to do. But, you know, he pointed out to me, you know, that he didn't want to tolerate my abusive behaviors. And he was actually a really good guy. And he's like, you know, he couldn't understand where it was coming from. Even though I had told him I had been abused, he really didn't know the whole specifics behind it. You know what I mean? And so we actually had to break up for a year so that I could, and we did it for, you know, the baby had died. I had lost the baby, and my mom died as well. So I mean, I really needed to work through some stuff. So I took a year off, and I moved away, and we didn't even talk for a year. And I spent a whole year grieving and working through a lot of my processes. And after losing the baby, that was very upsetting. Losing this relationship with my sweetheart, because I moved away, and then my mom, of course, had passed away, and the whole thing was absolutely crazy. I needed to go and really work through some of this stuff, so that's what I did. And I came out of it a whole lot better off, you know what I mean, because I realized that after a year I was like, I cannot allow myself to continue this lifestyle that my parents had put on me of abuse, right, of allowing people to abuse me or me abusing other people. I want to have an abuse-free life, you know, and at that point I realized that any relationship I was going to get into, I was going to have to watch myself, and I was going to have to watch them too, and tell them point blank that I was not taking any more abuse from anybody, right? So my sweetheart and I got back together, and things went so much better, you know what I mean? We've been able to work out any issue that's come up, really. And it's great. It's good to we have to have these boundaries set. We have to know what we're going to tolerate, what we're going to allow in our life, right? Sexual dysfunction or discomfort with sexual intimacy, I had a real issue with that. I probably still do. I'd have to say absolutely I do. And that's from growing up in a home where there was a lot of sexual abuse going on between mainly my parents, right? Watching the way that my dad was treating my mother, the way that my mother was screaming at him all the time. My mom really made their sex life part of public knowledge, right? She just brought it out to the whole family that he was raping her, and that because she was desperate, really. She should have left. But that's why my oldest siblings were always telling her, "You should get out, Mom. You should get an apartment. We'll try to help you get it. We'll help you get an apartment. You know what I mean? We'll help pay for things, right?" My older siblings who were working, or especially the oldest two, right? The oldest three, really. Were always trying to help my mom and telling her, "You should get out." You know what I mean? But my mom wouldn't go. She just felt that she was just stuck in this marriage, and that she just had to stay in it. And it was like, no, you don't really, because you're hurting the kids too, and we're because my mom was my main abuser, and because she was so unhealthy mentally and every other way, and that watching that, growing up around that whole sexual abusive environment, but listening to my parents banter and scream at each other about their sex life, as well as watching my dad rape my mother, which was really sucked, as well as knowing that he would go in there and attempt to rape her, and my brothers would have to go and save her. And then after my brothers moved out of the house, it was my job, right? Basically, it was just, my mom was just like, if you leave, you know what's going to happen. I mean, I wanted to move out when I was really 16 years old. I was about ready. I had enough of their crap. My mom was still beating on me, and I was really tired of it. And I was doing a lot of drugs, and I really wanted to get out and get out, be free from that, right? But my mom was like, well, if you leave, you know what's going to happen. Your father's just going to rape me, and he's, I was just like, well, and my brothers had told me when I was a young girl that I should protect my mother. So that whole issue, especially, sexual intimacy, it was blown for me a long time ago. Then at the age of 8, I was sexually abused by my brother. And so, who I thought it was my dad, because for many years I kind of put it away in the back of my mind just because it was so disturbing. And I thought it was my dad because I hated my dad. I really didn't, I didn't want to believe it could be my brother because I loved my brother very much. And so to think about that, you know what I mean, I kind of thought, well, maybe it was my dad, you know what I mean, because I couldn't see the face, but I remember biting this family member's ear or nose really extreme, hard, right? And I remember how gross it was, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I have a lot of issues with that, and I'm still working through that, and probably may go see a counselor or a therapist at some point. I don't know. Maybe I won't need to eventually, but I have worked through a lot of it. Really, because my sweetheart is an awesome, very awesome man, and he's shown me real love. You know what I mean? What real love is between two people that love each other. And so thank God for my sweetheart, because he really has helped me to really know what real love is between two people that love each other. And so I'm very thankful for that, But I still, obviously still have some issues with sexual intimacy. It's always been a problem, probably always will be. I don't know if I'd be able to ever be free to feel comfortable, right, because of the abuse that I suffered, as well as just watching my mom be abused sexually by my dad, and absolutely horrible what people do to each other, right? Low self-esteem is another one. I don't know. I used to suffer from that, huge, but I don't think I do anymore, because I realized that, I've learned over the years that I can do things, that I do count, that I do matter. My whole issues of self-esteem, as far as my, survivor issues go, really stem back to my parents, just where I fit in their life and how, what I meant to them. That's kind of where I suffer, I guess, as far as self-esteem goes. As far as the outside world goes, people in the outside world, and most people have treated me really well. You know what I mean? I've had some great friendships. I've had some awesome friendships, and I still do today. And I've had some great work experiences. I've done some awesome things. So I've been able to build a lot of confidence as far as my work skills go, as far as talking to people, you know what I mean? I don't have those issues, and I think it's because I've been very blessed to run into some awesome people who have treated me extremely well. It's just the issues of where I stood in my family's life in the family's role and where I stood in my parents' eyes, that really is what really hurts, because when you know that you weren't wanted as a child, when your parents tell you that you weren't wanted, and my mom really made that very clear, and I talk a lot about that because it really had a profound effect on my life. That my mom did not want me, and I was born out of rape, and that she wished I had died. And she wouldn't necessarily talk to me like that. She'd be like, "I wish you died." I mean, she was screaming at me. She'd be like, "I hate your guts, and I wish you had died, and you should have died." And if she wasn't saying that, she'd be telling me she was going to kill me. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I'll take you out. Along with the physical beatings and the verbal assaults. She really made it very clear how she felt about me, and that went on year after year after year, and even until the year before she died, she was still saying stuff like that. She was just like, "I didn't want any of you. I didn't want any of you children." So she really made it pretty clear that she was not happy. The kids didn't mean anything to her. We really couldn't make up for her horrible life, and that we didn't really matter in the whole scheme of things, right? So that's where my issues lie. It's just this whole pain, leftover pain of what I meant to my parents and what I meant in the family, because really our whole family the siblings didn't learn how to love each other either, because we didn't learn how to. We didn't get that from our parents. There was no nurturing. There was no. Really, there was no love. I had to learn all that stuff outside the home. And thank God I had some people who sort of stepped in and really, used to talk to me and really show me that just by examples of their own home lives, of how they treated their children. And they'd say the same things to me. They'd be like, "Oh, you're just a lovely kid." And, I wasn't hearing that at home. They'd be like, "You're a good girl, and, we wish you were our daughter, and you're just, you just hang in there," right? They were very supportive, and by them doing that to me, that's where I got that from. I had other people in my life who nurtured me when I was young, right, pretty much around the age of 12, 13, which I really needed to hear. And so I'm very thankful for those people, who took the time to recognize that I needed that, And so I did detail that in my book, if anybody wants to get a copy of that, A Life of Death, The Redemption, and yeah, pretty awesome. I'm really thankful for those people, because I wasn't hearing that at home, and I never did. So, a tendency towards self-blame, that's another issue that survivors might have because of, post-abuse issues, a tendency towards self-blame, blaming themselves. I never did that. I always blamed my parents. I got beat for it because my parents were, I had no problem telling my parents what I thought because I knew they were going to hurt me, and I really, when I was young, I wanted them to kill me, but I wouldn't, it's not that I was like trying to push for them to beat on me because it's very painful, but the whole issue is that when they were hurting me, I would just be like, "Why don't you get it over with and just kill me?" You know what I mean? You're killing me anyway. I'm already dead. Why don't you just finish it? You know what I mean? And so, of course, that would get me another beating, but they'd never kill me, right? I blamed them. I certainly did. And I certainly do now. I've never had a problem of putting the blame where the blame goes. I'm not sure why. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure what allowed me to see that what they were doing was wrong. I'm just not really sure. But it could be because the social workers were involved in our life when I was just a toddler, and my siblings were older, and they were they had talked to the social workers, and social workers, of course, were coming around for a couple of years, right? They were checking on us for a couple of years. And my siblings, I think they were told that, "Hey, what your parents have done to you is wrong," because, my parents, they were busted for child abuse charges, right? Physical abuse, neglect, and everything else, right? So, so I think that's where that came from, because my brothers had the knowledge that what was happening to them wasn't right, and so they it sort of worked its way down to me, and so I what my parents were doing was completely wrong, right? So I didn't have a problem with self-blame, which is great, because people have to know that abuse is not your fault. How could it be a child's fault? It just can't be. There's nothing in the world that a child could do to bring on abuse, right? And I don't care. It's the adult in the situation. It's the parent or the caregiver's responsibility to make sure that they don't abuse children, right? And it's not the kid's fault. It's not the children's fault or the baby's fault. It never is, never could be, right? So we have about a minute left. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year, Happy 2011, all the best to everybody, I'll continue on. We'll take another look at this on Monday morning. We'll finish off this article and whatnot. You can go and check it out, take really good care of yourselves. Have a wonderful weekend. Be very safe in all that you do. Happy New Year to all of you. I'm so looking forward to this new year, and I always do. It's another opportunity, another year to hopefully just feel that much better about things and that much closer to my the end result of this healing journey, which is really to walk free. What I mean, from the hurts, from the pain. You know what I mean? So and I'm so much further than I was, and I hope everybody will hang in there. It's so worth it. Never give up. That's my big message for the end of this year. Just never give up. Right? One day at a time, one step at a time. We're going to experience some bad days. That's all there is to it. We're going to have bad days. There's going to be bad times. But the thing is that there's bad times and bad days in everybody's life. And we can't give up. You know what I mean? We have to continue. We have to keep on going, right? Just like everybody else has to. They have to get up in the morning. They have to do their thing. You know what I mean? They have to get through life. And just because we were abused as children does not mean that we have to give it up. You know what I mean? So I just would ask you not to give up. I'm so glad I made the decision to stick around. I'm 4 years on the other side of that, and I have not had an idea or a thought of suicidal tendencies for over 4 years now. And it's a really good place to be, let me tell you. I'm so happy I made the decision to live and to stick around and to win this fight. And that's the big issue here, like if I would have done that and committed suicide or self-injured, self-sabotaged my life, really all I'm doing is allowing my parents to win this fight, which my parents were my main abusers as well as my brother. So, I'm not going to allow them to win. No, I'm going to have a good life. I'm going to have a really awesome, decent life. And I'm going to treat myself well. I'm going to treat other people well. And because I broke the cycle of abuse, it's a slap in my parents' face. Because they really did try to kill us. They tried to kill us all. Not only did they verbally threaten our lives, they physically threatened our lives. And just the damage that was done from year after year of this dysfunctional, abusive environment, abuse in every way. They really tried to kill us, and they were always talking about killing each other, and suicide was an option for me until 4 years ago. And I'm telling you, I win this fight because I stay alive, and I can have enough courage to walk it out, because it does take a lot of courage. It takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts to face the stuff that we've been through, and it takes a lot of strength. And sometimes, we have to reach out for help. So that's what I'm saying. If you got to call a crisis line, if you have to, whatever you have to do, you do it. If you have to call a crisis line or whatever. If you don't have a friend to talk to, you make sure you do phone somebody, right? Because you need to stick it out. You need to be free from this, like the rest of us who have made it this far, right? And who know that we're going to make it to the end. And that's the whole issue. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I never used to believe that. You know what I mean? And I could never see that light at the end of the tunnel. I was like, it doesn't exist for me, you know what I mean? But now, 4 years after my healing journey began, I can see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you have to hold on. And it is your choice, it is your decision, and it is up to you. It is up to me whether we reach that end or not, right? And so I would say, just keep on going, one day at a time, one step at a time, right? So Happy New Year, everybody, and, take really good care, and I'll be talking to you later this weekend. You can check my show page, and thanks a lot for being here. Take really good care of yourselves, because you do deserve to have a good life, and I do care about you, and I know that sometimes it's hard to care about ourselves, but I really do care, and so I want you to hang around, stick it out with me, and continue this journey. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.